several years.
Let's have a word of prayer. Thank you, Lord, for the opportunity to be here today and to worship with our good friends here at Faith. Bless us. Bless those on our prayer list. Give them comfort and peace and healing, and be with us throughout the day. Amen.
So there's one of, I don't know the child, but I don't know if you've seen it on Facebook, but his mother works at Junior's.
Katie Bug.
Yeah, that's all I've seen.
I don't know what's going on.
He had brain surgery. He had.
I heard that it came
I
back.
haven't heard anything else. We just go to. I go with Vicki Boyd a lot sometimes.
I just saw on Facebook, like on Saturday, they put something like prayers were answered. And then today.
Well, he had the surgery and they took the mask off, and the last I heard they sent it.
Yeah.
So they.
I kind of thought maybe they had, with that post, I thought maybe they had gotten the results, but apparently
I
not,
think
because
they
she
have. I don't-
reposted the request for prayers again this morning, so.
10 years old.
And, I don't know what his real name is.
I don't even, I saw it, I think, yesterday, but they call him K-Bug, K-E-Y Bug, and it's the, what I've seen on.
Well, today, we're going to talk about Israel. And I think this is the book of Israel. Israel is the only time in the Bible that Israel is mentioned. I'm not really sure. They say that he wrote 1st and 2nd Corinthians maybe, but I don't know. But let's talk about who Ezra was. He was a priest and a scribe, and he'd been in Babylon most of his life, studying the word and the laws. And he was directed by the king and by God, King and Terraxus or something like that. These names have flown me today.
I think it's something Xerxes.
Yeah.
Xerxes or something.
He was directed by the king to gather all these precious items and take them to Jerusalem, where they were rebuilding once again, refurbishing the temple. And that was the king's demand. And then God's demand was that he go there and teach the Jews the laws of the Torah, because they had slipped back into their old ways. And I guess that guy was an emperor instead of a king. But his primary charge was to teach the Jewish law in Palestine. And because of this, many have referred to him as the father of Judaism, because he was insistent that they observe the Torah as the basic Jewish identity, and that they were strict with the laws that they followed. And when he went, he knew they weren't going to like him, and they weren't going to like what he had to say, but he went anyway. And let's see, I'm going to skip the whole first sentence, because all of it is son of, and I cannot say any of those names. So I'm not even going to try to butcher. Then I'm going to start at verse 6. Then Israel went up from Babylonia. He was a scribe, skilled in the laws of Moses, that the Lord of the God of Israel had given. And the king granted him all that he asked for. The hand of God, his God, was upon him. So he was blessed, and he went with the blessings of God. Some of the people in Israel, and some of the priests and Levites, the singers and gatekeepers, and the temple servants also went to Jerusalem. In the 7th year of King Artaxerxes, I guess that's how you say it, they came to Jerusalem in the 5th month, which was the 7th year of this king. On the first day of the 5th month, the journey started up from Babylon, and on the first day of the 5th month he came to Jerusalem. For the generous hand of his God was upon it. For Israel had set his heart to study the laws of the God, and to do it, and to teach the statutes and ordinance. And then we skip a few verses, and this talks about what the lesson is really about today. Whatever is commanded by the God of heaven, let it be done with zeal from the house of the God of heaven, or wrath will come upon the realm of the king and his heirs. We also notify you that it shall not be lawful to impose tribute, custom, or tolls on any of the priests or the Levites, the singers, the doorkeepers, the temple servants, or any other servants in this house of God. So all these people were going, and God was saying, just leave them alone and let them do what it is that I've sent them to do. And you, Israel, according to the God's given wisdom you possess, appoint magistrates and judges who may judge all the people in the province beyond the river who knows the laws of your God, and you shall teach those who do not know them. All who will not obey the Lord of your God and the Lord of the king, let judgment be strictly executed on them, whereas for death or for banishment or for confiscation of their goods or imprisonment. So he was really given a free hand. He was given everything that he needed with the implements that he had to go and make the temple look the way that they wanted it to look again. Very regal is what I got the impressions. And he was, like I said, he was going into this studies, and he'd set his heart on making sure that he could teach this law to them, these laws to them. And it would mean a lot of changes, both politically, religiously, and socially. And you know, people really resist these kind of changes. We all do. But his own relationship with God gave him the courage to step up and do it anyway. And of course it helped him that he had full authorization of the Persian government to reestablish worship of the Jewish gods and adhere to the laws of Moses. So he had a lot to do, and these reforms imposed strict regimen that were quite legalistic. It was necessary if the community was to become distinct from all the other neighbors. The good news is that they reunited the nation into a worshiping community of faith. Bad news was it hurt a lot of people in the process, because they had gone back to, the laws say you can't marry outside of your religion, you can't marry outside of and these people were considered foreign. And Israel went about making them do things like divorcing their spouses, sending their wives and their children away because they didn't comply. And I think we would all have a hard time with that today. And they certainly had a hard time then. And it was quite an accomplishment to do that, but he really went to Jerusalem with intent on teaching the statutes and judgments. His primary goal was insisting. He was very regimented, and he didn't give much in one way or the other. So he had the hand of the Lord upon him, and that helped him a lot. And he also had the human help of the king, but it still sort of made him an outcast among those people because they did not like what he said. But he does, some way, somehow, pull it all together and was able to get them to comply with the law and do what he wanted them to do. And he gave all the credit to God. He didn't take any of it for himself. And God doesn't really, Ezra thought God did not interfere in the lives of those who didn't want to receive him. But God knows who will respond to his love and who will open their hearts when needed. Israel was ready to do God's work. He was called. He did what he said he was going to do. He lived as the Torah taught him to live, and he taught the Torahs to others. Many of the things that he and Nehemiah had been to Jerusalem, I think 60 years before Ezra, to do some of the same things that Ezra did in the temple, but apparently they backslide every time you turn around, and they have to send somebody else to get them on the straight and narrow, so that it's something that they both worked hand in hand to reunite the nation into a worshiping community. And he was also given a lot of money to make sure that he could do what he wanted to do. And he had pretty much free reign with it, which is unusual. He said, and this is in verse 21 of the same chapter, the king made a decree to all the treasures in the province beyond the river that whatever Ezra the priest, the scribe of the laws, required of you, let it be done with diligence. And the king wasn't a Jew, but he was trying to do what he could do to help the Jewish people, primarily in Israel's attempt to bring Judea, or Jewish people, back into the fold, so to speak. And it wasn't an easy task. And what really wasn't an easy task for me was how to try to figure out what this lesson said to us and how we could bring it into everyday living for us. One of the things is that he gave credit to God for everything he did. So, and we know that things that he did would go against what Christians believe today, which is what? Different from what he was saying. We're sort of more lax in our relationships and who we consider within our realms of who we could, but you got to understand that this was back in the Old Testament, and nobody had met Christ yet. He had not come. Jesus had not come. So I think if you think forward to the New Testament and the things that Jesus did, he showed a bit more compassion and understanding and caring for the people he was dealing with and trying to teach and get him to follow than Ezra did.
He was for everyone, not just a
Yes.
certain religion.
And that's-
He is for everyone.
Yeah, and that's how Christians believe today, and that's how it is and should be, but it was a lot different back in the Old Testament times. And I'm sure that it was hard for them to follow these laws. Because, you know, and I think to myself, what does Ezra's story say to us today? We all understand the presence of God in our lives. We all know that that is the basis of Christianity, and Christianity is the basis of a Christian's life. That sometimes we let God into our lives, as Israel did, and we let God show us the way to live. But most of the time, I dare say we follow it to the letter. So we studied the Bible where we could, and like today, and we taught it. Not necessarily in Sunday school, but we all are used to coming to Sunday school, and we teach the Bible and we go over it. But I think our children are having a whole different experience with Christianity today than we did as we were growing up, and even as we do today. That's very evident by the churches today. They're young people. If they have a group of young people, they're very fortunate to have them. And but we can do what God wishes us to do, and we just have to decide what that is for us individually, as a church, as a community, as a nation. There's all kinds of steps that we can follow through to make sure that we are doing God's will. And we all slide, and it's very evident that that's not unusual. It's been history for years and years, especially with the Israelites. They'd go along for a long time, and then they go back to their pagan ways or their golden idol days and intermarriage and all of this, and just mess up everything that was set out for them to do. And I think sometimes we just need a jolt that kind of wakes us up as to what's going on in our lives. And Israel or Jerusalem Jewish people that jolt. He went in and said, this is the way it's going to be, folks.
This right here says that Christ offered us that jolt
Yes,
through his life, death, and the resurrection.
yes, that's what I was getting to. He offers us that jolt through his life, death, resurrection. And if we keep the focus on the vision of Christ's atoning life, then we will live the life that we have been known to want to live and led to live. But it's not always easy. And believe it or not, that's all I could pull out of this lesson today.
That was good.
Yeah.
That was good.
So, how about, if anybody have anything else they want to offer? Well, let's look at our prayer on page 62. Lord God, we thank you for leaders who teach others your way. Help us to be obedient to your law and keep your word, and to confront fear and prejudice within ourselves and within our community. Like Israel, may we be ready to be sent by you wherever we are needed. Amen.